Welcome back to Tell Me More with me, CJ Quarterbaum. Tell Me More exists to help bridge the gap in our intergenerational workplace dynamics, build better leaders, and ultimately prepare for the future. One of the best ways to prepare for the future is by knowing your story and knowing how to share it. And in order for us to do that, we need people to help us. And who better than my guest today, Nathalia Montenegro. Nathalia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, CJ. Very happy to be here today.
Glad to have you. What people don't know is this is attempt number 2. We had a really great conversation that just got messed up in the editing bay. And so thank you for taking the time to do this with me again.
Of course. I think it was good if you wanted to re-record it, so it was probably good.
Yeah, I think our conversation was phenomenal. And there were so many nuggets that you dropped in there that we're hoping to recreate the magic. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But we'll start as we always do. Tell the people about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do now?
Okay. So I help people and brands to find their voice, tell their story, and build a brand that connects emotionally with people. I've been working in marketing communications for 12 years. And throughout this time, I explored different ways of working, different formats, worked for in offices, I worked remote, I worked for companies for myself. I went freelancer, I built a business. Now I have my own business for a while now, a few years. And I also write 2 newsletters on Substack. One is Dear Self, about living a life that is true to who you are. And the second one is The Diary of a Brand Therapist, where I talk about finding your voice and building your brand online.
That's good work. I think we're storytelling creatures of narrative,
Yeah.
and learning to tell our stories is, I think it's just important for all of us, not just from a professional standpoint, but from a personal standpoint as well. Nathalia, how did you find your voice?
Well, that's a big question. But I think coming back to what you just mentioned, starting from there, is I think telling your story, especially for yourself, I think it's something we're not encouraged to do and something we take for granted. It's so important because it kind of answers the question of who we are. What's our identity? And we usually make of our identity like, oh, I am my job title, or I am the son or the daughter of this person. Oh, I'm the spouse of that person. I'm a mother. I'm a father. We make our identity our function in the world and how we relate to others. But actually, who we are is a very complex question, and we can go into deep, so many levels, into philosophical levels, spiritual levels. But to make it practical here, it's a result of all the experiences we had in our lives, but not only the facts of what happened to us, but what we made out of them. What meaning did we give to those experiences we had? And like that informed our next step and our next move, which is exactly what makes us very unique. It doesn't matter what you've been through in life, or if you think your life is boring, or you have nothing to share, or nothing to say, or not interesting. This is not true, because it's the small experiences, not the big things, that actually shape who you become. And I think when we tell our story to ourselves, which is not like a 15 minutes task, it's more like an ongoing practice. We start discovering new perspectives about ourselves, about who we are. We identify patterns, and it opens new doors for also what we can become.
Yeah. So that's a lot of the work that I do in coaching leaders. It's that inner
Oh,
work. It
amazing.
is, who are you?
Yeah,
What's your story? What are the
exactly.
things that inform your perspective? Because I grew up in New York City. All right. It's the largest
Mhm.
city in the country. Many people would argue it's the center of the world. Um, and yet I can recognize I grew up in a tiny bubble. There's 8 billion people on earth, and my city with 8.5 million people in it is such a small perspective. But that perspective has informed and it colors everything. So when I work with leaders, I'm like,
100%.
who are you? What's your background? Why do you think the way that you think? And how is that keeping you from having empathy for others, for seeing the stories of others as valuable, and all those different things? So I look at this and I go, it's great for us to have our story, to know our story. What does it look like for a brand to tell a story?
So I usually say that there's two kinds of businesses or brands. One is when the founders is in it as an investor because they see a market opportunity and that they want the business to grow, they want to exit, they want to sell. And there are other type of founders who are deeply emotionally involved with their business and with their brand. And one pattern that I noticed throughout all these years working with founders is that business is also a form of self-expression. Building a business is also a form of art. Because when you're building a business, you're basically creating your own world, right? You're deciding like what you're gonna put out there, if it's a product, a knowledge, an experience, or something like this. You decide who you work with and how these people that work with you, how they interact, how you set the culture. You define everything. And when we really like dig deep into the person behind it or the people, sometimes it's a group, right? There's always something inside of them that they wanted to bring out in the world through this business. And by identifying this essence and this core, we bring this out in the context of the business, because there's one thing that is also like really true. The same way we are very unique, we're also all the same. So if you have a certain thought, experience, feeling, struggle, you might think like, oh, it's just me. But the moment you put it out there, I'm guarantee you that like there's hundreds of thousands of other people who also feel the same, think the same, go through the same, that also think it's just like me. So by identifying the essence of like, what is this urge? What is this motivation? What is this founder trying to figure out for themselves that he's bringing out in the world through this business? We bring this essence and this core, we put into the context and the strategy of the business so it connects with other people on that level.
That tell me a little bit about your career journey and how you landed in this place.
Yeah, it's not straightforward. What I say like is like follow joy, follow your interest. Um, one thing I always knew when I was my teen years, I always knew I would have my business. This is something for sure. I knew two things. I knew that I would not live in Brazil. I'm originally from Brazil. Today I live in Portugal. So I knew I would live abroad, and I knew that I would have my business. How that would happen, I have no idea. I had no idea. So it was time to go to university, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to have my business. So it's like, okay, I don't know what this business is about yet, but I will need to manage the business, to know how to manage the business. So let's start with business school. And that's why I went to business school, because I don't know what's going to happen next, but I will need the knowledge, the skills. Um, in business school, I discovered marketing. I was part of the research group of marketing in the university, and I loved that. I was really passionate about it. Ended up getting a job in marketing, but it was really, really boring. It was in a cashew nut industry. I hate it. It was like I was doing spreadsheets like the entire day. I was like, this is not the marketing like I was expecting. And I had some friends at the time that worked in fashion, and I thought like, oh my God, it's so cool to do marketing fashion because you can be really creative. You can like, yeah, express the story in so many different ways. And I tried for a year to get a job in marketing in fashion, but I didn't get any response because at the time in my city, most fashion brands only hired, even for marketing, from people coming from fashion school. So after a year of trying and getting no, 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 I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to fashion school if I want to work in fashion. And I had no idea about fashion. I was not a fashion girl. I was never interested in it, but I really wanted to do creative work. And just by following my gut, not expecting really anything out of it, in the fashion school, I discovered my love for study identity. Because what people don't know is that fashion, it's not about looking good. Fashion's about expressing yourself. And that's what you actually study when you go to fashion school. You study art history, you study movements, you study how people express through told their stories through clothing. And I end up going to work in marketing fashion after that. I fulfilled my goal. And yeah, and then there was it. Like, and from marketing, I went into branding and then into brand strategy, because like branding more on the how things look. Brand strategy is more like how the business strategy work aligned with your communications in your story, like the connectiveness. I don't know if this word exists. The connection between all the parts of the business to make it coherent. Um, and the reason why I think that's going to connect to some of your experience probably is that working in fashion inside of the companies, I noticed that lots of things went wrong because the leaders had no direction. They didn't know where they were going. Lack of brand strategy in that sense of the business. And then they were always asking for the team to fix the problems or to solve the problems or to create solutions. But it's very hard to be creative all the time if you don't know where you're going. Right? What is the direction like? And then it's always like we have an expression in Portuguese for this, probably in English too. But it's like when you're always just like putting the fire away.
Like whack-a-mole,
No, I don't know.
where
It's
I don't know
like
if you ever see that game where it's like the little moles pop up and you have to
yeah,
whack them. And
exactly,
yeah,
exactly, exactly. So you're constantly doing that because there's no plan, there's no vision for the future. And I think I would love to hear from you too. Like, what is from your experience, the impact, the importance of a leader having a vision also to manage our team and coordinate that?
yeah. I think strong leadership, good leadership, has strong vision and is clear. If you don't have a vision, you don't know where you're going. And anti-vision is not vision. So it's not enough to just say, well, I don't want to be that. You have to
Yeah,
know
I
where you
love
are
that.
going and where you are running, because people they want to follow you. They trust you as the leader, but if what they get from you is a lack of clarity, a lack of conviction, a lack of direction, then they start doing their own thing. And that's where you get mission drift, because you're saying, hey, this is our mission. But if you're not clear on it, now people are like, well, I'm going to go do this thing over here that sounds good. And I'm going to try this thing out over here that sounds good. And ultimately, as the leader, your job is not to know every little detail, but it's to galvanize people and tell them where you're going, tell them how you're going to get there, and supporting them along the way. But if you don't know where you're going,
Yeah,
then everyone's going nuts.
yeah, true. And everyone is trying to also to make it work, but they get a feeling also that it's never enough because they don't know also what has to be achieved, right? Yeah.
Expectations are unclear. You feel like your time
Mhm.
is wasted. I mean, I've worked in places where I've spent months on a project working for leadership that wasn't clear, for them to turn around and go, yeah, I don't want that. That's a waste of time. It's like, but this is the
My
conversation
God.
we had, and I am acting
Yes.
based on the conversation. But the leader decided they wanted to go do something else, and with no communication, clarity, conviction, communication, you
Hmm.
need these things to lead well.
Yeah. I had experience once where I was in a similar situation, like, trying different strategies, different projects to move into that direction the leadership wanted. Um, but it was never that. So one day I went to my leader and I said like, okay, just tell me, what is the goal? What do you want this to look like? And he said, we will know when we see it. That's really hard, right? It's really hard to aim at something that I don't know what looks like. It's
And you're
draining.
walking
It's
in the
really
dark at that
draining.
point.
Yeah.
And that's the part. Most people don't feel burnout because they're doing too much. They feel burnout because they feel like their work is having no impact. And so if you are
Oh my
walking
God,
in
I
the
love
dark,
that.
spending so much time on the project, for your boss to go, we'll know when we see it. Well, now it's like, what am I doing? Am I wasting my time here? And that's what leads people to burnout.
Yeah, because it comes back to you, like, or to me, when it happened to me. What I made out of that was that, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not capable. I'm not good enough. Um, and you make it all about you, and it takes a toll on your self-esteem and your professional self-esteem.
I think what's really hard for a lot of us in that is our identity is wrapped up in our work. So work isn't just what you do, it's who you are.
I was guilty of that. I was guilty of that. It's a good because we started the conversation
Yeah.
with like, what's your identity, right? It's your story, not your job title.
So
And
if your identity is your work, what happens when work is failing? Then you are failing. You are not good enough. You are insert negative
yeah,
thought here. And most of like we don't have a really healthy separation of the two. And that leads
yeah,
to
no,
dangerous
for sure.
places.
Yeah. I really believe in the integration of life and work, but in a way of like we have to enjoy what we're doing, but we're not defined by what we do. And I think that's really, really important. And it's something really hard to do these days when we get all these messages of like, you are what you do in the world, what you show, social media, all these kind of things lead us to like, oh, if I don't have anything to show, so who we are, who am I?
As a general rule of life, you don't hold anything tightly that you can't take with you when you die. You're not taking your job
That's
title.
good advice. That's good
Like,
advice.
yeah, so I think about that a lot. So I found you visiting your Substack, and there was a line in your post about finding pleasure in work where you said there's a sort of pain that I experienced that I could never really describe despite my best efforts. Something about having your real talents put aside while being under resourced and under supported to deliver what's being asked from people who are clueless about what they themselves are looking for. That line, we'll know when we see it. I feel like that was that moment that you were talking about.
Yes, it was exactly that moment. It was exactly that situation. But I think one thing that it's really important to say here that I would like to say when I reflect back on my story is that at the time, exactly what you said, I made the work my identity. I made my job my identity. So who would at the time define if I was good or not? Other people, my boss, the company, my team, and that's why when misaligned, it's so painful because you're giving other people the responsibility to tell you reassure you of who you are. And
Yeah,
today, when I reflect back, I realized I was looking for so much validation. I should say like, oh, they have this position, I have this perspective. It doesn't seem like we're aligned. What can I do about that? Do I leave the job? Do I search for something else? Do I try different strategies inside to find more alignment? But at the time, the conclusion I get was like, I'm not cut out for this. I have to change careers.
yeah. Working under leadership that is not the best can make you doubt a lot of things about yourself, about your strengths and your gifts and what
Mm-hmm.
you know to be true about you. You had another line in there about this where you said misalignment can make us doubt everything we know about ourselves. The only antidote is deeply understanding who we are, which enables us to translate our inner compass into meaningful decisions and directions in the external world. That that line hit me in my soul because I
Yeah,
have
tell me how.
I've experienced this deeply where I was working in a place where from a client perspective, from a customer perspective, I was beloved. But from a management perspective, the only message I ever got is you are not good enough. You are failing. I don't know why we hired you. You're bad at this. And I'm like, the gap between the people who pay me and the people I
Mm-hmm.
support, it's the Grand Canyon, or it's the Atlantic Ocean since we're across the ocean from each other. And it took a really long time for me to kind of reconcile that and understand, oh, that the problem is up there. It's not here and it's not with them. I did this this exercise a couple of months ago. It's called the Reflected
Mhm.
Best Self. And this,
Okay.
it brought me to tears because the Reflected Best Self is designed to help you write your story based on your strengths and what you're good at. And then you ultimately, you kind of take it and you craft the job and the life that you want built around your strengths. But in order to do this, you have to send this survey out to a bunch of people and you ask them, hey, can you just tell a couple of stories about when you've seen me at my best? Tell some stories about when you've seen me good, my strengths. And because so much of our feedback and our room for growth is always built off the negative. Nathalia, you need to improve at this. Nathalia, you're not good at this. But this is saying, hey, Nathalia, you are great at this. Nathalia, I've seen you shine here. Nathalia, you are insert thing here. And to read all of these stories about what people see in me, it it was not just hard, it was humbling, but it helps create greater alignment. Because now I'm looking and I'm like, oh, if this is what you see, and if this is where you see me at my strength, and all these stories you're telling, these are things that light me up and excite me. How do I pursue more of that? So I've been
Exactly.
touting this to everybody to go do a reflected best self because it will change your life.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's such a helpful exercise. I didn't know that that was the name for it. I did it a few years ago, probably like 5 years ago, where I sent a survey also to a few friends, slightly different questions. But it was really, really great to see ourselves from a different perspective, to notice how other people see us in a positive light. And then take that and not just like, oh, that's so nice to hear, but as you said, to act on that. And also to integrate that, because for me at the time, I had so many amazing supporting friends and they will always lift me up, but I didn't own it. I didn't believe myself. I was constantly working and acting every day to get more of those feedback. But every time I heard it, it was like 5 seconds and it was dismissed. And again, I needed that validation again. I needed that validation again. So it's great to have that feedback, but to work in a way that you start owning this and not just pursuing that.
That's really good. So what did you do? You got the feedback. What was the next step for you?
So at that time, it didn't change a lot because I didn't own it. I just kept into the same pattern. But what really helped me and what really like helped me integrate all those characteristics and qualities that my friends always like noticed in me was actually when I wrote my story from my perspective, integrating their feedback. Okay, so they told me these stories and they said I'm great and this and this and this. Not what they told me. What do I think about it? I did this, and this, and this, and what is my perspective on it? Oh, yeah, I really got these results. Oh, I really failed here, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that I'm like a bad person, that I'm not good or whatever. It's a feedback, it's a result. But then I did X, Y, and Z, and like, in this data. I love this. So good insight you gave. Like, build a database of your life. Make your decisions, make your next steps, make it based on data. But you have to start collecting it. How do you collect it? Looking back to your story, your experiences.
Yeah. I've been doing this exercise this year, very, very intentionally this year to, I'm collecting all the best moments and I've just been writing them
That's
down
so
from,
great.
I started in January and here we are in, what month is this? In November. So we're near the end of the year and I'm going back through the list and I'm like, oh yeah, this happened and this happened and this really lit me up. And I was so excited about this because sometimes I think when we feel like we're in the storm or life is really hard, we forget how good things can be.
We forget. We remember all the bad things. We remember all the low points, but we don't remember the good stuff. Unfortunately, we have to
And so we
be
have
really
to, yeah,
intentional with that.
we have to keep the records, keep the
Yeah,
receipts, as I like to say, because
love it.
they help you find that alignment and find that joy. Because when we're upset or we're emotional or we're hurt, we're not always thinking and seeing straight. But if we have that record to turn back to, that data, it helps us navigate this tricky world.
Yeah, 100%.
So you use the tool to help you figure out this idea of finding joy and pleasure at work from the School of Life. Can you tell me about it?
Yes, so I 100% recommend the workbook of career from the School of Life when I was going through that really dark time at work and the relationship with myself. I was considering changing careers because of like, oh, I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I should find totally different path. But before I made the move, I found this workbook, and it's a book of exercise to help you gain clarity on like your strengths, your capabilities, what path you could explore professionally within your career or in different careers. It was really, really helpful. And the first exercise in the book is the about the 12 points of pleasure at work. And it guides you through some statements, some quizzes that help you identify in your story throughout your life since you're a kid, um, what point do you identify with? And it guides you into like, oh, so this is the points of pleasure at work that you enjoy the most. And the more aligned with this point of pleasures you are, the most fulfilling you feel at work. And when I shared this exercise in Substack, the feedback I got from so many people was that, "Oh my god, I realized that the work that I do, none of my tasks and none of my workflow touches on this pleasure point." And it's not always about changing careers. It's just like, how can I be more intentional to make sure my work aligns with these pleasure points at work? And then you can transform your whole experience without having to change jobs or to change careers sometimes just because you know what to look for. Clarity, what we started talking in the beginning of this call, clarity is really important. And I would love to hear you also your perspective from the perspective of a leader, how important it is to know your team and the people who work for you individually so you can also maybe help them align the work with their pleasure points and the impacts of that.
Yeah, so my belief as a leader is that my job is not to just get you to do your job. My belief as a leader is that my job is to get the most out of you professionally and sometimes personally. I want to see you be the best version of yourself. And that means I have to take the time to understand you, what you're good at, what you're not so good at, what are your areas of frustration, your pain points, where are your areas available for growth and development, and then how do I help facilitate that? So I love this. There's this personality test called Strengths Finders, and it's series of questions that are designed to help you figure out what are your top 5 strengths. And I think it's out of a list of like 30. And it's not that the other areas aren't strengths for you, but these are the ones that dominate. So I recognize that one of mine is developer. Like I love
Hmm.
watching people transform. I love seeing you start here and then end here. When I was a college professor, my favorite part of the semester was at the end where students would go, man, I got in this class and I thought this way, but by the end of the semester, I now think this way because of the things we did here. And I think that's the job of a leader. It's to move you from A to B so that you can be a full and flourishing best version of yourself, whether it's here or it's somewhere else.
But I have
Leadership.
a question for
Yeah.
you on that.
Yeah.
So, from a team's member perspective, what if sometimes like you don't trust the leader to share some of those vulnerabilities? How do you build this trust from the leader perspective with your team to make sure that your team feel comfortable with like, okay, these are my weaknesses, my frustrations, this is what I would like to change or work differently without fear that I'm gonna be punished for that or maybe dismissed for that.
So that word is everything. Fear. Our responsibility as leaders is to create psychological safety. Uh, this book right here, The Fearless Organization. Let me see. Can I get in the
Mm,
camera? There we go. The Fearless Organization by
yeah.
Amy Edmondson. She is the person who coined the term psychological safety. She's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
premier scholar in that area. And what psychological safety is it is the ability for team members to feel secure and safe enough that they can express vulnerabilities, make mistakes, put out bad ideas without the fear of reprisal or retribution, or they're going to be dinged negatively for whatever their perceived shortcomings are. Psychological safety in the workplace is everything, because without safety and without trust, you have nothing. And as a leader, it is your job to cultivate that. And the way you do that is you start with your vulnerability. You start by showing up and saying, I have weaknesses. I have areas I need to grow. I don't have it all together. I don't have all the answers. And not every part of your story is for everybody, right? So we understand that there are times and places of appropriateness for what we share, what we don't share. But do you create a learning environment where people know that failure is not only safe, failure is encouraged? If people feel safe to fail, then they will feel safe to bring you everything. And those are the people who you'll get to develop and you get to train and you'll get to see be the best version of themselves. But it all starts with the atmosphere that you create.
Yeah. I think I love I think what you're saying is true. I love it. And I think that's a dream, but it's sad to see how few organizations actually put the work and the effort to develop the leaders to be able to create this kind of environment.
And this is why I'm here, because ideally I get to come into your organization and I help you on your leadership development, on your psychological safety. I give you a good pulse on the culture in your place. I worked at a place one time where I
Mm.
came in an executive level position. I was third from the top. So it was a small organization, probably 50 of us. Within my first week, it was like I was hired to be the family therapist. People were just pouring out all of their frustrations, their angst, their fears, how toxic the culture was, because leadership did not create a space that was safe enough for them to do that. What I did when I came in is I said, I want to meet with every single person one-on-one. I wasn't trying to dig for something. I was trying to understand the culture. All it took was a few conversations to get a good pulse on the place.
How do you believe that culture is formed inside of an organization?
From the top, culture trickles down. Who you are as a leader sets the tone. You set the values, you set the norms. You cannot be a leader who tells people to show up on time when you're 15 minutes late to every meeting, because you're communicating something there. You can't be a leader who says, we value family, but then you're never home with yours. Or you're sending Slacks and emails 10, 11 o'clock at night, off hours. And I understand sometimes you got a thought in your head and you're like, oh, I'm just going to send a quick Slack. And no one's responsible for checking it or responding to it, but we're human. You see that little ding come up and it does something in you. And you're like, well, if the
Yeah.
boss is working, then I should be working too. If you need to send it, schedule it for later. Almost every app gives you that functionality. There's this great quote that says, a leader will rarely be responsible for all of an organization's success, but they can be responsible for all of an organization's failure. Culture trickles down. How you show up,
I never heard
how you
that.
lead, what you model, that's going to be reflected in your team and your organization. And I've seen great people lost to terrible cultures.
Yeah. I've been part of terrible cultures.
Same. I'm working on a book about it.
Yeah, your work is needed. Once I also, after I left the company, my feedback, my exit feedback for them was like, please, you're an amazing company, you're amazing people, but just hire a leadership coach. I think your company will grow so much faster and better, exactly because of all these things that you just listed.
Do you know if they did it?
I don't know. I hope they did. I wish they did.
The unfortunate thing for a lot of leaders is that ego's involved. And a lot of leaders will think to themselves, I am where I am because I'm me. So who are you to tell me that I need help when you're not in my position? You didn't build what I build. You didn't work your way to this spot. And it takes a certain level of humility to look and go, I'm missing something and I need help.
I think it's also about um, optimizing what you want to get out of people, right? It's like that's your way of being, that's just your way of existing. But there's ways that you can get your team to work for you way better, way stronger, way smoother, or to achieve whatever is that you want to achieve. Sometimes it's not just about fixing, but it's like to make it better and improving in every aspect. And if we're humans, work on the human side. I think it's essential to make this optimization work, not just with systems and processes, but also in relationships.
It's this idea of exploration versus exploitation. Exploitation
Mhm.
is I'm just trying to get out as much from you as I can, where exploration says, hey, what can we learn here? How do we keep growing?
Yeah,
So
love
I'm
that.
curious for you as you've been building the life that you want and the career that you want. What's next for you?
Well, now I'm very excited building my business. It's going great. Helping more people, more brands to find their voice, tell their story. I really love this work. Helping people reconnect with themselves. And there's in the plans like of writing a book, but I'm not gonna say it's gonna come because it's still it's still very early process.
Good. Your work is needed. I think from a
Thank
storytelling
you.
standpoint, both personally and professionally, we all need it. Natalia, tell the people where can they find you?
Oh, you can find me on Substack, Nathalia Montenegro, Natalia with TH, and you'll see my both publications there. You can also find me on Instagram, Natalia with TH Montenegro _.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Tell Me More. And thank you for watching or listening, however it is you're consuming this podcast. Please like, rate, review, do all the things, and drop something in the comments. Tell me what's the nugget you took away from this episode. And I'll see you next time as I ask you to tell me more.